and welcome inside the Parc Fermé for podcast number 687. Guess who this is?
No, Todd, not now!
It's Todd, exactly, and you know why I've asked you here.
You must convince the villagers that I'm harmless.
That's exactly what I need you to do tonight. For your kind consideration, you know what we're going to talk about? We're going to talk about, McLaren, cost caps, COVID-19 corral, and frozen parts? Yeah, we're going to get into that. But before covering any of that, I have to introduce my guest tonight, which of course means I got to go all the way to the right coast of America, nestled in our nation's capital, where she is a victim of hashtag just the wind. You know her as the redoubtable one. It is Grace. How you doing, Grace?
You know, I knew I had a lot of Formula One blog, the Parc Fermé, FBC merch, but this podcast has really brought home the fact that I own a lot of our t-shirts.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Propping up the economy just with that.
Oh, shut up! I haven't introduced you yet.
Damn it, man!
I'll
Is
go
this your
out the
first
door,
podcast?
and then I'll
Go out and then
knock
come
on
back
the door.
in.
Yeah, I'll come back.
Yeah, okay. Oh, well, as you just heard, Grace and I tonight, that's right, we're joined by none other than...
Hello, everybody. This is Paul Charles, the International.
The International, that's how you know him. He's a motorsport logistics awesome super dude and the sporting director of Heart of Racing IMSA series with Aston Martin. You know him as the International, but he lets Grace and I call him Paul. Paul, how you doing?
Yeah, I mean, occasionally I let you.
Hey, yeah.
Wait, is Awesome Super Dude like on your name tag now?
It says Awesome
It's
Super
on
Dude.
the back of my t-shirt.
Oh.
I get it
Well,
sewn in.
Because we were
Right.
talking a couple shows ago, right, about how now on your team you have to do like 8 extra jobs or 30 extra jobs. Like I think Awesome Dude should be just whatever at the end of all your job titles now.
Okay.
I think when
everyone else agreeable to that, I'm not sure they would.
Sure.
I think when they're like, broadcasting it and they have picture of you, the Chiron's just like Paul Charsley, awesome super dude.
Awesome.
Yeah,
I like that.
I like it too. I don't know why it hasn't happened before, but
Paul, a keen viewer, it's not going to go by the keen viewer of what's behind you there. It's
The rake.
The rake.
The rake.
The rake.
Definitely.
And is that a pair of boxing gloves? What is that? I don't know.
Boxing gloves.
No, I don't know.
On the other side from the rake.
What is
No,
that, Paul? That's
on that side.
yeah.
No, that's just shopping bags.
Oh, okay. That's where they go.
When I go looting,
No, Paul, we're
There's a
talking
rake.
about the Porsche sitting behind you.
that's not a Porsche. That's an Acura Integra.
Oh, is it? Oh, I
This
thought
is
it was
this
your
is the
white
bane of
Porsche.
my existence. Building my Acura Integra for my son.
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, changed the
Nice.
suspension. We've slammed it down. We've got new wheels and tires.
New carpet.
The carpeting.
There's the wheels and tires that are going to go on it.
Yeah.
I got new
Nice.
carpet in it. Been fixing stuff every day. It
Yeah.
seems it's been fun actually. But
Yeah.
fix the stereo. I've never done a stereo thing in a car before, where you have to, because when I bought it, it was a pretty cheap car.
Yeah.
The little stereo was just kind of floating around in the middle of the center box, so I had to build that all up so it's now nice and secure in there. What else have I done?
So everybody always comes to me in my family to do the car stereos because I'm an audio video guy. And so they always come to me, and it was funny. I was over with my brother, who's the older brother, and his sons, and so I'm over there. They were making fun of me because we were hammering something, and they were saying, "Oh yeah, good hammer skills," And I said, "Well, I have other skills. All right. If you give me a pile of wood, I'm not going to build you a house. It's just not what I do." But anyway, so when the stereo
They're heckling you when you're helping them.
no, but then they needed a stereo. They got a stereo. They wanted me to help put it in. So I went over there, and they're in their car getting ready to have me come out and show them how to do a car stereo, right? So I just come out and bring a hammer, and I toss it in the front seat, and I said, "Good luck." Since you're so good with a hammer, go ahead and
Right.
fix that stereo. And they kind of like, okay, point taken.
You some bitch. Yeah.
Make fun of me.
Here's a head unit and a hammer. Good luck.
Yeah.
Right, good
so
luck.
Put stereo. Put your speakers in it. And
Yeah.
Put, you
Dude,
Halo
did you put
headlights
16
on
by
it.
9 Jensen triaxles? Awesome, dude.
I got them from Radio Shack.
Awesome.
Yeah. So no, it's been a lot of work today.
That's
I was
nice.
cutting the rear. In the rear when you open the boot up, you got the little
Big
wood
15-inch
piece.
sub in there.
No, I'm not doing that.
Okay. All right.
But you got the boogie wood piece that you put the carpet on, so I had to cut a new makeshift one for that, and because the other one was not very good. So yeah.
Yeah, it's
by
a
little.
Project.
the 12 disc CD player goes back there too.
That's right. 12 disc
Yes,
player,
12 disc
subwoofer.
That's
right.
right.
And your crossover and your power amps, they all go
My
back there too.
changer. Oh, it's jammed. It's jammed. Better stop. Pull over. Unjam that baby.
Wait a minute. That's my logins and Messina disc. Don't scratch it.
Oh man. Yeah. The carpet was the worst job for sure.
Yeah, that was miserable looking.
That is miserable job.
Yeah.
Never do that, people.
You know, the carpets in a car is miserable, and so is the headliner. Doing a headliner sucks. You know. All right.
I'll reveal pictures when it's all done. It's going to get painted and all that.
Oh, that'd be good.
All right.
Are you going to put a big number 5 on the side? Like
Yes,
Mach 5?
actually, my son wants some kind of sticker that.
That'd be good.
Speed racer sticker on the rear.
Yeah, perfect.
So we'll do that.
Oh, that'd be good.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about some Formula One news. Hey, before talking about Formula One, man, what terrible, terrible news about Alex Zanardi. If you, I'm sure most of you know Alex Zanardi in a horrible accident with his hand bike, and he is currently in an induced coma with severe head injuries. He's stable, but in very serious conditions. The last update that I saw, reports suggested that he had lost control of his bike and veered into the path of an oncoming truck, which couldn't avoid him. The hospital released a statement, and they basically said that the current conditions of general stability still do not allow to exclude the possibility of adverse events. Obviously translation, but anyway, very, very, very difficult situation. My gosh, you know, if you're thinking about an inspirational guy, Alex is it, man. I mean, this guy lost both of his legs in that horrible accident. An IndyCar was at Rockingham Oval in the UK, right, Paul?
No, it was in Germany.
Oh, it Lausitzring. That's
Lausitzring,
right.
yeah.
Yep. In Germany, and it's just, you know, and you thought, oh my gosh, you know, career ending and everything. But he came back and he was a Paralympian, and he just embraced his situation as the new normal, and was an inspiration to just millions of people that are fans of his, and certainly those with disabilities. And it's just gutting to see this happen.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember the exact quote, but I just remember saying he doesn't regret the incident happening before, else it wouldn't have never put him on this journey that he went through, which is like, how do you say that? But I mean, the guy turning a negative into a positive was kind of his mantra for life. I mean, it makes me really regret. Last year I was at Daytona, and it's like pouring with rain, and he was racing at Daytona in the GT BMW, I believe. And so I was coming back from the pit lane, and there was Alex in his wheelchair in the garages at Daytona, completely alone. Right, none of the cars had come back because they basically shut down the practice. All the cars were kind of just sitting there, and I was like, should I go over and say something to him? And I just didn't, right? Because I don't like to bother people or anything like that.
Right.
But it does make you think, people, if you know you get the opportunity, you know, you got to take those opportunities when you can. Because you know, I just kind of walked by and just waved, and that was about it. But I mean, he was an inspiration and would have been a great guy to walk up to and just chat with, you know.
Oh my gosh,
and
yes.
you know, you got to take those opportunities when you're there, because you don't know if they're ever going to come again. So let's hope that he recovers. You know, as the strife he's gone through his life. You know, if there's anyone that's going to recover from this, it's Alex Zanardi. But wow, brutal thing to hear. Really shocked me, actually. Yeah,
they were saying that, you know, the injuries are pretty extensive, and you know, anytime. I know this from, you know, firsthand experience with my father, and then certainly with well, you could look at Michael Schumacher,
right?
And anytime, you know, you start, you know, something like that happens to the cantaloupe, it's not good.
Yep. It's a sensitive thing. So even if your rules in whatever state you're in say don't wear a helmet, wear a bloody helmet. That's all I can say.
Yeah, no doubt. So, yeah, very difficult. Grace, I'm sure you watched, you know, when he was in IndyCar and watched that as well.
Absolutely. I was going to say, I also really liked his book. I really, it's kind of long, but I enjoyed it. I recommend that. And you'll never think about Chip Ganassi the same. So it's,
I think a lot about Chip Ganassi.
I bet you do, but I just
I got a lot of thoughts on Chip Ganassi.
I'm having them right now. Hold on. I need a moment. No, I'm just saying he had a lot of funny stories about Chip Ganassi because when he came over to the States, that's who he raced for. And so it was funny that he, kind of trying to figure out how IndyCar worked and, but anyway, I really enjoyed his book. I read it maybe 10 years ago now. It's pretty old, but I recommend it.
Did in the book did he tell you what was in the secret bunker under the hill?
Oh, the one
that Ganassi tests in.
No.
Oh, Paul, we got to sneak in there.
If it exists.
Yeah, right.
Secret bunker.
I got a. Well, it's a tunnel supposedly that was disused.
The turnpike.
That then Ganassi uses their wind tunnel. I still don't believe it.
It used to be the part of the Pennsylvania Turnpike.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's where they drove the cars upside down because they could.
Right. That's right. Because nobody was looking, so we could do it. Yeah. And you just have to trust me. Yeah. No.
If our aerodynamic engineer is correct, you can drive upside down.
Yeah, because I always remember thinking about Juan Pablo Montoya in Somerset, Pennsylvania. I like this idea. This was just, Western Pennsylvania, there's not a lot of people that look like JPM in that part of the country. So, I'm pretty sure if somebody saw him, they'd be like, I saw this guy. Yeah, I think you would have noticed.
Everyone in Somerset said, hey, it's Jipham.
Yeah.
We know who Jipham is.
Well, they do now because now he's in NASCAR, but they didn't then.
Right.
So, it kind of stuck out.
I bet Paul's got a lot of thoughts on Ganassi he'd like to share right now.
Go ahead, man. We have at least
as well
an
as
hour.
Paul Tracy.
Yeah, Paul Tracy.
That was last week.
More open to share that. Yeah.
I like the idea of this being a little time for Paul to just kind of unload things, right?
Like
it's
a tell-all, really.
Yeah, right. Unburden yourself. It's our pandemic gift to you.
It's all going to be in the book. You got to pay your $14.95.
Just a little sneak peek.
It's
the Charzolini memoir.
That's right. It's Charzolini memoir. The Paul Charsley, How I Rebuilt an Integra.
Carpet by carpet.
And other
sales.
And why you should never do it.
Yeah. Why never do the carpet.
Paul Charsley, How I Brought Chip Ganassi Down. I like it. So anyway, absolutely. I hope Alex recovers, but not good news from that camp. So anyway, all right. Let's move on to more brighter news. Yeah, this isn't good.
This is the saddest podcast ever.
I didn't set out at that. Yeah, I know.
That's saying something.
It is, because I didn't set out to make it sad.
I'm just saying not sad in my ability to produce entertaining content. I mean sad in the sense of the news that we have to follow this week.
Episode 430 was just...
God, it was the worst.
I thought 320 was bad. Oh, man.
Gosh.
No, actually, we've released almost 700 really sad podcasts.
Nearly.
That's how we roll. Nearly, yeah. I think maybe there was 2 that were worth listening to.
I don't know.
All right. Hat tip Andrew Benson over at the BBC for this story. McLaren seeks court assistance and help. So it seems that McLaren are going through some serious financial stress at the moment. Now, you recall we talked about this. It was announced a few weeks ago that they were seeking to score some financial investment in the group, McLaren Group. This includes the entirety of McLaren. And they were planning on using the McLaren Technology Center, as well as its heritage car collection, to back that structured debt, or in other terms, as collateral for that debt. And then recall just last week we mentioned McLaren was looking to sell McLaren Racing, which would include the IndyCar team and the F1 team, or at least 30% of that they were willing to entertain an investment of, not controlling interest, but 30%. Well, the problem now is that there is a group of investors who says that those assets, the MTC, the McLaren Technology Center, and its heritage collection, they say that those assets are already being used as collateral for a bond launched back in 2017, which, according to the court documents Andrew Benson mentioned, they were used to raise $650 million worth of funding for the business. But that's not all, folks. The court documents go on to say that McLaren their earlier credit agreement of $130 million is now fully drawn on. So they've fully drawn down the credit. I don't know if that's a line of credit or what it is. And that the shareholders had just recently injected the team with a further $291 million just this past March. And this was to, quote, provide the group with ample liquidity in order to fund its business plan, end quote. All of the investment in total, all of these investment vehicles equal a hefty $500 million invested in McLaren in the last 18 months, folks. McLaren is looking to the court to release those assets, the MTC and the Heritage Collection, in order to secure additional funding. And this is what they said, quote, the pandemic has had a massive and detrimental effect on the group's trading performance. The start of the F1 season has been delayed. Car dealerships have temporarily closed. Supplies have been interrupted. Manufacturing has been suspended or impeded. Customer orders have been declined. Sponsorship revenues have fallen, and additional costs have arisen from health and safety measures, end quote. McLaren also had applied for a $150 million business continuity loan from the government earlier this year, but was denied as they did not fit the criteria. So all of this adds to a pretty stunning picture of where they are financially. Now, one could argue that quote from McLaren about the impeded or suspended manufacturing, supply chain disruption, closed dealerships, sponsorship, all that stuff, that's got to be true, folks, for, Mercedes or for Ferrari or even Renault, if you think of some of these. But McLaren isn't the size of those companies. And Grace, we'll start with you. After $500,000 in investment in the last 18 months, they're looking hat in hand to find even more investments. They're saying if they could get that $275 million by using the MTC and the Heritage Collection as collateral, that would get them through to 2021. But boy, that's a tall order at this point.
Yes, it is. I don't know. This is not good. And I mean, I don't know, call Bahrain. How much more money can they hook you up with,
Right.
We joked a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about their financial issues that, like, this is Ron Dennis's in. Like, there's a part of me that does like the idea of Ron Dennis just buying some part of the team, just being like, this is mine now again, right? Or just like living, at the technical center, like just live. He just moves into the Paragon, right?
Right.
But joking aside, this is not.
Like, one day, next week or something, the employees are going to come in and there's Ron with his feet on the
guys.
desk.
Nice, Ron.
I just want to have
I'm back. Did you miss me? Did you miss me?
Yeah, or like he's like fishing in the pond out front or something. Like he's got his own like camping gear out there, like his little mini
Hey,
REI.
Zach, can you go get me some more worms here?
That'd be good. Thanks.
Hurry up.
Yeah, Zach, could you go down and get my dry cleaning? Yeah.
This shirt's a little wrinkled. But yeah, that's a lot of money. This is not.
Paul, I have to think, I didn't know how bad this was in total, but Andrew Benson's article, it's literally having me thinking, we're to Chapter 11 insolvency here.
Well, it kind of shows you how they were keeping going before.
Yeah.
Right? How were McLaren surviving with minimal sponsorships, etc.? Well, basically, they were borrowing the money. We're just assuming that everyone from Saudi Arabia just kept feeding them money. And, how much do you want this week, Zach? And not really true. So they were borrowing on a borrow. And it's nearly like a crack addict right now. Like, I know I've sold this, but can I have a second mortgage out on my car out there so I can keep going? It's not a good picture at all. And yeah, it definitely gives a very restrictive view of how the money from Saudi Arabia comes in, they're not just, as I said, just writing checks left, right, and center, no matter what. I think they're trying to build and push away from it and try and build it into an actual business that funds itself. You know, obviously sponsorship through Formula One, you're always going to need that, but also the automotive business, building that up, selling enough cars worldwide to kind of help build everything kind of like Ferrari has done, which is tough to do because Ferrari have been doing it for 60 something years, 70 years, right? Tough to do in like a 5-year span from the cutoff. So yeah, it's not good. I know obviously a lot of people have been furloughed or let go from there. I mean, a lot of emails bounce back with I'm sorry, you know, they're not reachable now, right? So they've really brought it down to a minimal amount of people there, and you've got to have a certain amount of people to run a Formula One team, but definitely doesn't look good for Daniel Ricciardo, who just signed a 2-year deal, right? Coming out of Renault because you think, well, maybe this deal isn't going to be around. You move to another deal and you're like, okay, out the frying pan into the fire a little bit.
I know. And when you think about it, it's like these assets, you know, once you have those assets as collateral for a loan, I mean, everybody is subordinated to the bank. So whoever the bank is in this scenario, whatever else is leveraged in the assets, everyone else is subordinated to the bank traditionally. And it just has me wondering about the solvency of this thing. Probably why they separated those investments. We need money from McLaren Group, but we also be entertaining selling like 30% of the racing team to keep it going, right? And so I would imagine that 30%, whatever that equates to value-wise, that's just to keep that F1 team solvent and going. But to your point, Paul, Grace, if you think about it, Daniel Ricciardo leaving Red Bull, going to Renault, it not panning out at Renault, but at least they're a big manufacturer. There was some question marks whether they would continue in Formula One. Cyril Abiteboul says that they are. So Dan gets frustrated with the lack of progress, goes over to McLaren, and now McLaren's like, we can't even buy Dan a face mask at this point. So, gosh, what a miserable time for Daniel Ricciardo.
I mean, Williams is starting to look like a good viable seat.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, they're still running. Yeah, right? I mean, both teams are under the threat of not coming back. And I think Renault has a track record of doing that. And, but they do always have more, being a manufacturer, they have the ability to come in and come out. But, you're worried about both of those teams for different reasons, not being in Formula One, I guess is what I'm trying to get at. And so you really just want a team that is going to be there, go to Racing Point, right? Like at least they're going to be there, right? At this point. But yeah, it does suck for Daniel Ricciardo, but I would hope he would land somewhere. I can't imagine that talent they're just going to let float out there.
I always question the word investment into a Formula One team.
Yeah.
I'm just not sure what investment means. You're going to get a return in the end. I'm not sure.
It's like investing in an airline.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Or an F1 race, right? Like there's no return to that.
Yeah. I don't know how anyone gets the return. It's more like you're buying into an experience of being part of a Formula One team. I'm not sure there's any you're ever going to get your money back on that stuff. Just ask Mansour Ogier, I mean, it's just something that they spend their massive amounts of money on, but not necessarily something they're ever thinking about getting a return on. So investment, I think, is maybe a wrong word, but ownership.
Yeah. When you think of like Mercedes, of course, they did get it. They reaped the investment because they sold a lot more cars, and that makes sense. But they were winning. And Ferrari is a global brand and has been of epic proportions. But when you think of McLaren, you think of Racing Point, AlphaTauri, Renault, who isn't winning and who hasn't won since 2006. What is the ROI, the return on their investment in that? And Yeah, you'd be hard pressed to be thinking that this is some sort of cash cow because the business model itself doesn't lend itself for big ROI. And look at Claire Williams, who's, found a way to keep things in the black for a while and make sure everybody was paid. And then they kind of just reduced themselves, saying it's a tiny little business. As long as we keep our costs down and we can get just enough prize money to cover all of our costs, that's all right. It's our job. It's our day job. We're just basically buying our day job. But now that's upside down. That's not sustainable. Yeah, this is a really big deal. I think it's a lot worse. Things are a lot worse in McLaren than what they're saying.
I mean, they make fantastic road cars. Obviously,
Oh my
I've
gosh,
driven a ton of them, and it's an amazing car or cars. And there's got to be something there to keep going. Because of that. Now you've got the IndyCar team, which then right now doesn't make any sense. If you're trying to borrow, on your plants outside your building there to try and keep the Formula One team going, how does the IndyCar even make sense? I don't, there's something there. I think it's been spread out too far, too thin, and investment, sponsorship, etc. maybe hasn't come in as expected to kind of prop that kind of bravado in.
Right.
I think there's a successful business in there. I'm
For
just
sure.
not sure if there's not going to be a lot of contracting before it then finds where it should be and then build out from there. But obviously it came from a big history and was really built on that Formula One history to build the car business. But the car business may be its strongest asset at this point because they do make fantastic cars and people want to buy them. But, with the COVID thing and shutting that down and not selling any road cars, that kind of anything that was making money is kind of thwarted right now, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's no doubt their cars are awesome. Their technology group has lots of other things they're involved in, from electrical and all kinds of things that they're involved in. You think of Williams Technology or Williams Engineering Group, which they ended up selling, certainly there's absolutely a viable business there. It's not like the business is just lost the plot and it's just a bad product and nobody wants it. It's a great product. There's lots of different revenue streams inside that business. My thinking is if there was some pretty wealthy people, now would be the time to pick up McLaren. You could come in and buy this entire operation at this point. If you were like the Lawrence Stroll,
You'd want the entire operation, right?
You'd
You
want
wouldn't just buy into the Formula One team.
No.
Like,
All of it.
Formula One team is something, but I want part of the
and
road
my thing
car.
is like, okay, so what if Fiat wanted to buy McLaren cars? What if Audi, VW Group thought, you know what? We'll come in, we'll buy the entire McLaren operation, Now might be the time to get it, to keep things going, might be a time to do that and buy out the Bahrain Sovereign Fund and Auger and who knows, But I would say either they are heading for solvency, which is a debt restructuring, or they're actually really ripe for some serious investors. That would be my hunch. Anyway.
Does anybody know what Mr. Norris does?
Mr. Norris, no.
Or Mr. Ricciardo. Do we know what they're doing?
He goes out to the shops and buys lots of Pop-Tarts.
Mr. Norris. He runs around in a Rossi bucket hat, I think.
Not Lando, right? Like, so I mean, somebody's got to have a dad, right? They could.
Right.
How about here? I don't
He's
know.
fairly rich, as far as I know. Lando's dad was fairly rich. He funded him. Yeah, he funded him through the lower ranks.
Well, there you go, because that
Mr.
seems
Norris,
like the thing.
Let's do it.
It's these kids with their rich dads, Lawrence Stroll, Latifi, now Norris. Why not?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't remember what Norris's dad did though, because I remember I was in England one time and Lando was racing in the F4 series or something, and he was a hot shoe in that. But I remember, everyone, grumbling about, well, his dad's just a big rich guy, so he's got this.
Well,
right, it's what you heard from Chilton too.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. So,
Well, Mr. Norris, if you happen to be listening to this podcast, now's your opportunity. Look at those cars you could have. You could have that technical center. You too could have a little tent, a little REI special outside on the pond every morning, and just make a little bonfire, do a little fishing. What kind of vacation do you want?
That's right. You think of the adventures you could have diving in the McLaren Lake out front to the bottom to find all that Ferrari loot that's hidden down there.
It's only 3 pages. I don't know that,
and the broken dustbusters.
Yeah, right.
Some Roombas that rolled in. I don't know.
And the statue that they pulled down of Ron Dennis.
Oh, yeah. So I think that, yeah, Mr. Norris, Mr. Ricciardo, now's your big chance. Buy this team.
All right, moving on. 2022, it is the year of the reckoning. The cost cap that's coming in 2021 will no doubt have an impact at just $145 million. That's going to be the team budget in 2021. But Renault's Cyril Abiteboul says it may just drive a wedge between the customer and the supplier. Now, I know you're sitting at home, you're going, what the hell? Well, hang on, I'll tell you. Here's what he said, quote, "It was a worry when there was either no budget cap or the budget cap was sufficiently high that the grid would remain under a 2-tier system." And he said this hat tip, Autosport. Now that we have a budget cap that is low enough that the grid will be much more competitive, I'm curious to see what will happen to those collaborations between teams. Because I think right now, Mercedes is happy to let Racing Point copy its car.
Racing Point.
Yeah. Whether
Racing Point, nice.
Whether it's legal or not legal, it's not my point. Yes, it is, Cyril.
That's totally.
But they are very happy to help them in making their car very competitive. I will be very curious to see if that's still the case in 2022.
I have a question before you go into your bullet points.
Yes.
Thank you for raising your hand there, Grace.
Well, I realize you can see me, right? Like,
yes.
So, I have a question. I don't have to just try to interrupt like I normally do, right? Mr. Kata. Yeah. So, his point, he's like, well, either no budget cap or when the budget cap was high enough that we have 2-tier system. Then that's not a budget cap, right? Like, that's not solving anything. Like, the whole point of a budget cap is to even the playing field. If you're just still going to have a 2-tiered system, then keep doing what you're doing, right? Like, of course, this was always the plan. Why are we acting like, why is Abiteboul acting like, oh, well, now all of a sudden, what are we going to do about, Racing Point and, Mercedes is just not going to, it's just not going to work. They've thought it, this has been worked out. That's, of course, has to work. That's the whole point.
Right. Well, if you consider that teams such as Haas F1 and Racing Point,
I didn't come up with that. I clearly heard that somewhere. I'm not that clever.
Just claim it as your own.
All right. I invented that.
I do it all the time.
That's the secret.
Maybe it's contact tracing point.
Build lightness, Paul Charsley. Got it.
if you could hashtag.
I invented that.
Hashtag blessed.
If you consider Haas and Racing Point get more than just engines, they get gearbox, suspensions, and more, you can see where this could occur. At what point would a manufacturer be willing to slow or stop the flow of communication and assistance? Perhaps we could look to Red Bull as an example. When fans were telling Red Bull a couple of years ago to quit whining and to get out of the sport, they were sick and tired of Red Bull's comments in the press. We were actually saying the opposite because Mercedes and Ferrari would not supply them. And they still won't. So if Red Bull had stayed with Renault, when would Cyril hold back or stop supporting them? Well, he didn't. To his credit, Renault didn't when Red Bull was actually better than the Works team. So Renault
They've always been better than the Works team.
They've always been, yeah, it's Red Bull, right? For Renault, it has to be about getting a new partner and perhaps, if Williams, Haas, or another smaller team do sell or something, they could be a lucrative, technical partner for the new owner. But the thing about this is, Paul, I understand what he's saying because right now he doesn't have any partners. And so what he's saying is, oh, the cost cap, things are going to be a lot more competitive. And right now, he's also using it as a way to jab Racing Point for copying Merck's car from last year. And he's basically saying that what happens if Mercedes and Racing Point are thereabouts with each other? Is Mercedes going to be willing to do all of the things they have been doing to help Racing Point at that point? Or are they just going to ship a crate over that says engine, good luck?
Yeah, new parts.
New parts, good luck. Right.
Update.
Right.
Just been filed off and then they tapped it in again to the part they'd already sent.
Right. They say,
It's a good point.
Did you send the firmware? You have to check the website. I don't know.
With some
You'll have to check with Kathy, and she's on holiday right now.
Yeah,
When's the next race again?
Yeah.
Oh.
Kathy's been furloughed. Sorry.
With some IKEA instructions that you're like,
Exactly.
how many screws do I need to do this?
Yeah, the same instructions I got to put the halo headlights in the Integra, which was 0.
Yeah, you can see
Open the
Lawrence
box
going.
and it says there are no instructions.
Right.
Okay.
You can see Lawrence saying, "Hey."
Ow. Yeah.
He said, "Wait a minute. This is not what James Ellison used to build Mercedes. All right, this is not it."
It's true. I mean, to agree. Yeah, he was trying to make a point there, but what would the flow of information be? Would it slow down? Would the upgrades come a little slower? Because the cost cap can get you so much, but if they're controlling a lot of the parts that would upgrade the car, then they can control the flow of that and the speed that stuff gets there to keep that separation there, right? I mean, it's a very, very true part. That's why customer cars maybe should be built by someone that isn't actually competing in the series. But, that's kind of like when March for a customer car team manufacturer, they didn't have a factory team. They just supplied their car to a number of teams, right? But when you got the bleed down, which was happening in the 70s and 80s, you got the old McLaren or you got the old Wolf or this and that. They were definitely big steps away from the upgraded model, and there was no way those two were ever going to compete to each other. Now everything's a lot tighter, and all the cars have to be new every year. So basically, they have to have the same spec as the Mercedes has to have the same spec as what the Racing Point's going to have on it. So they could control that to a point, but how does the FIA control that part of it so that the Racing Points and the et cetera are still getting the up-to-date equipment from the manufacturer supplying them through that? And I don't think there's any way they can do that.
Yeah, I don't know. Grace, I guess one thing is if it did get more competitive, I could see the FIA having to look at some of these supplier contracts, because if those contracts are just between two teams like Mercedes and Race Point, we're picking on them, but it could be Ferrari or Haas. Yeah, it could be Haas and Ferrari. But if there isn't some verbiage in those contracts, not that Lawrence or Haas are stupid that they would sign it, but it seems like to me that there might be some balancing in those contracts with the flow of upgrades, the flow of software updates, the amount of support from an engineering standpoint, spare parts. I'm sure the teams have all that in their contracts, but the rate at which, and the FIA, I would think, wouldn't be comfortable with saying, well, Mercedes is showing up with an upgraded engine this weekend, and then maybe in 2 or 3 weekends, Racing Point will get their upgrade. I don't think that's good enough. I think there would have to be some sort of regulations around any of those supplier contracts that if the manufacturer gets it, so does the customer.
Right. There would have to be. And I know there's rules around like price gouging. Like, if we can only spend X amount on engines, Ferrari can't suddenly say, well, it's X amount plus $2, right? Like that there's controls in that sense of how much, once the cost cap is in place, that they can charge for these pieces, for these parts. I just think that, this seems like an obvious issue, and I guess even if I don't personally know the answer, that doesn't mean that somebody hasn't thought about this. I can't see why that isn't in the plan, because that seems like an obvious next step, is that right, if I could send, but that could always happen. So there has to be something around, what stops even without a cost cap from Mercedes being
Yeah,
like,
right.
I mean, in the
nope,
past,
we're not
it's
doing
always
it.
it's been the same. Like when Benson had the Ford factory support, they would get the new HB engines, and the other Ford teams would get them whenever Ford were good and willing to do it. Right? Yeah. Fuel, same thing. The Shell give Ferrari the super new fuel, and the other Alfa Romeo will get it, whenever they're good and ready to give it. I mean, that's always been a part of the cycle where the teams that weren't the top elite supported team by whatever supplier there was would always, get their upgrade whenever it was applicable. But
the tires.
I just don't know how you police that.
That's what I was thinking about.
Yeah, the tires were designed for the top teams, and everyone else, that's what you get.
Right.
Yeah, Bridgestone was notorious for that, right? Like, we build our tires for Ferrari, everybody else lived with it.
Right. Yep.
So also had Jordan, right?
Yeah, so I don't know. We'll see. It'll be interesting. Well, hey, look, at the very worst, let's hope he's right on the competitiveness, right? Let's hope we should be so lucky to be in a situation where Mercedes is hedging its amount of support they want to give a Racing Point, because Racing Point's just 4 points behind them in the championship.
Haas is suddenly beating Ferrari. I mean, it's 2020. Yeah. Who the hell knows, right? Like,
no.
Would you be surprised? No.
That would be awesome.
That's hysteria.
That would be great.
Whatever.
Yeah, I mean, with Renault, they were obviously not stupid, and Red Bull had won them 4 titles before they even came in with their factory team, right? So, and was still obviously very competitive. Anything they did to thwart Red Bull was, that they had a cycle in mind of how to bring their factory team up to snuff where they can actually compete with the other people. They should have done it by now, but they didn't. But at that point, when they were still working with Red Bull, that was absolutely the best thing to do, was supply Red Bull with the best they had, because that was ultimately how Renault would have success on individually as a manufacturer in the engine side in the back of a Red Bull rather than in a Renault car.
Right. All right. Next up in the news, frozen parts. Teams will continue to race with their 2020 cars through 2021. With the new technical regulations being delayed to 2022. There's a lot of years there. Let me reiterate. So the cars they have this year are going to be the cars that they drive next year, and the technical regulations that were supposed to be coming, they've been delayed till 2022. All right.
Okay.
Therefore, any development on a series of parts will be limited through 2020 in order to achieve much needed cost savings, with teams being required to use tokens to update specific parts on the car.
They get 2 tokens. They know Chuck E. Cheese.
2 tokens, Chuck E. Cheese. Then I'm doing skee ball.
I don't know. It just makes
There's a lot of tickets come out. I've got to be good.
Ticket. I got 87 tickets. What's that worth?
That's because you're just like walking. You're just walking up the ramp and dumping your balls in skee ball, right?
Yeah, right. Just in the center.
Yeah. I'm just saying. I like this. Required to use tokens. They get 2. That's like barely plural tokens. 2.
They get to use token-ish.
Yeah, right.
So Appendix 22 to the regulations includes details of which components are frozen from the first race of the season, and what they're referring to is R1 2020.
Race 1.
Right. And which components are frozen at the second point that it calls mid-2020. This is pretty complex stuff, Paul.
That's the
R1
that's the 6th
2020.
or the 8th or the 10th race. I'm not sure which one.
I think it's the 8th. It's Italy currently.
Yeah, Ole. Mid-2020 freeze date has now been revealed.
What the hell? I actually did some work before I started. This show was in the original notes.
Did you have the day off today or what?
No. It's amazing how I fit all these things in the course of my day.
Yes.
Oh, it's amazing.
Well, Lottie,
That's right. Y'all be in the van down by the river.
That's right. So the date has been revealed. It can be revealed, Paul. This just in. That's right. Mid-2020, folks. Mid-2020 is now known as September 30th. Woo! September 30th. The team must also alert the FIA. You asked for miracles, I give you the FIA. They must alert them of any intentions to use their tokens to change homologated components, and that date is now specified, are you ready, as July 22nd. Also, by August 5th, teams must provide the FIA with a full specification of the intended changes of the HC and any affected components. The previous iteration of the rules... Am I boring anybody out there?
No, this last bullet's the best one. Get to the last bullet.
Okay, hold on. The previous iteration... I know, Paul. I'm like, oh, hell.
Paid $490.
I know. And, you know, we have a lot of listeners that love the detail, and I love that they do, but I'm kind of like, can we just go racing? I don't know, really?
Let's go. You get there.
The previous iteration of the rules allowed teams to revert. Now, this is important, Paul.
It's the most
Pay
important
attention,
bullet.
damn it. The previous iteration of the rules allowed teams to revert to the original homologated component if they had used tokens and the update did not, quote, meet the competitor's expectations. So, Paul Charsley, you use tokens, you upgrade this, you throw it on the car, you run it at a race, and it sucks. And you know, that's weird. Yeah, this doesn't work. And then you could revert back to the old one.
It takes them 5 races to figure out it doesn't work.
Oh, now get this. Now teams can only go back to an old component within 5 races of making that change. And if they do... That's a mic drop. Yes. If they do, they have to discard the new one. So this is so teams don't make 2 options and then allow them to flip-flop back and forth between them.
Mm-hmm. I get it.
Do you get it?
I do
Paul's
get
like, yeah, I get it, but whatever.
And the thing is, what I thought was the cruelest of all is if you say, I'm going to make this change, here are my 2 tokens, and then you don't make the change, you don't get your tokens back. You don't get to use them on something else. You don't get to say, like, whatever you declared, you better hope that's what you're going to do, because otherwise, SOL.
Yeah, so basically, they can put an upgrade on. They have a bit of a while to figure out if they like it. If they don't like it, they throw it away.
And that's it. You wasted your tokens.
So I think what we've determined here...
And you cannot bring it back, mister.
Right.
You leave that outside.
Right.
I think what we've determined here is that Formula One, or at least the FIA, has turned into a bunch of seedy carnies.
Yeah.
Very small hands, smell like cabbage.
Smell like cabbage. I want to do ring toss. Here you go. Here's my 2 tokens. Okay. Wait a minute. These rings don't even fit around the top. Oh, sorry. Tough. Yeah, so the FIA is like a cheap carny act. I like it.
Like we didn't know that already.
Yeah, right.
It's true. Yeah, and if McLaren makes it, they already have to spend their tokens on their Mercedes engine.
Oh, that's right.
So,
Nice, Ron.
Tokens are spent.
Right. Tokens are done. Yeah, that's exactly it. All right, COVID-19 restrictions and the impact. Racing Point's Andrew Green says that engine changes and other measures might take a lot longer due to the COVID measures in the paddock. He said, quote, "It's very different. It's going to be a real challenge going forward. Jobs now take a lot longer, and we have to try and manage that." Now, he said that, and with 8 races and 10 weekends, time is something of a luxury in 2020, as Paul so accurately said in the last story.
That's half a season.
It's half a season. I never thought of it that way. That's genius. I suspect changing an engine now. I'm going back. This is Andrew talking. This isn't me. This is Andrew.
He sounds like from the Midwest.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah,
And
totally.
he sounds like a Midwest, born and raised American. That's what Andrew sounds
Green.
like.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Actually, he doesn't. He sounds like this. Once in a lifetime, there comes a movie Come on, Paul, you have to love that.
And he wears a little handkerchief on the top of his head.
Yeah. Come on. That was my Mike Palin. Come on.
I know. He's a classic.
It's so good. Anyway, Andrew continues. He says, I suspect changing an engine now will take quite some time. We can only have certain members of the crew working on the car at any one time, and that does limit the speed in which you can do a power unit change. When we get into the real meat of the car, the center around the power unit, we're probably looking at, in some cases, it taking twice as long. I'm curious, Paul, you're looking at the technical manuals and the regulations on COVID and what you guys are having to do at this race coming up in IMSA. You guys have had to look at this and think, any of these damages, any of these like repairs, if we have front fender damage, any of that stuff, are you factoring in this in elongated time?
Well, in the rules that we get, it's try to, right? It doesn't say you are mandated to. So in those kind of situations, you should still be able to scramble, right? Where someone's underneath the car, someone's undoing the bolts someone's doing the side, everything. You scramble, you just wear the face mask, etc. But you should still be able to be in close proximity. Perhaps, I guess, the Formula One mandate is literally that even working on the car, even though if they've been cleared, they've been tested, that none of these people can work within 6 feet of each other. That's a tough one, right? And everyone's used to, which is, I always said, it's going to be the hardest thing to get a bunch of mechanics to not work, when that's just their mindset is you just burrow down and do whatever needs to get done, So that'd be really hard in a very tense and time-sensitive moment to follow these parameters to the letter of the law. I don't know. I mean, I understand, I read why they still need to mandate those distances just in case someone comes up, is infected, so that they're still kept at distance. So technically, if they're in, an individual is isolated from the team, even though they're working within the team, right? That's the whole big deal about the Ross Brawn thing, rather than, everyone's been tested, so everyone can, go mud wrestling if you like. Right? Yeah. But they're keeping everyone distanced. So if there is an issue, which there will be, which we've seen with the baseball teams going back, NHL teams, a lot of these people going back to go to training camps have all of a sudden been tested, bound to be infected and have to get the hell out of there. So you want to keep that distance, that separation there, so that doesn't become a complete disaster where just everything has to shut down completely. So it's going to be really hard. That's a while back I talked about the spare car idea, because of maybe doing a race, 2 races on a weekend, etc. I still don't think that's a horrible idea in situations like this. If these teams are not going to be able to change an engine in a reasonable amount of time,
it's a great point,
to get the car back on there, then let's bring in a spare car, which doesn't cost any more money. It really doesn't. It's just the preparedness of the
build
car
it up
that they already have. If just the rules mandate that they can't build the car up, all the parts are there, the car's there, have a spare car ready. So if these situations happen, they can bring in the T car, get the driver and the car in the race, and keep more cars on the track. I still think that's a valid idea.
Yeah, it is. I like that idea, Grace. That's a factor.
I think the idea is shit.
There you go. Moving on.
Thank you,
I
Nikki.
think it's a good idea. I'm sorry. You were going to actually
Race
ask me
louder. Yeah. That idea was a shitbox.
It is a shitbox. So.
Right.
I mean, I agree with Paul. I mean, human beings just aren't good at this. I mean, I think that's always been I feel like I've probably said that here, right? Like, people are going to be good at, like, it's February, and people are going to be good at, like, don't go anywhere. But anything between that is going to be a mess, because we're humans and we're not going to be good at that, right? So and so then you're putting people in a position where normally they're just all hands on deck, we got to get this fixed, and now you're saying, no, you can't do that. That's not going to happen, right? It's just, And who wants to be the guy that says, no, I'm gonna be over here wearing my mask and I'm not gonna get involved, right?
Nah,
Like,
there's something happens to that car, Grace. You're right. Something happens to that car instantly. That place turns into an all-black scrum. You know, like a New Zealand All Blacks rugby. You know, it just turns into a
take
scrum.
the fine.
Whatever, man. We got to get this going.
I mean, people do that now. Like, oh, well, you know, I want to see my friend so bad. It's okay. I can deal with it. You know what I mean? We have our own bravado. We're humans. It's how we exist.
We're
so
social creatures.
I just think it's going to be very hard. This kind of like, you know, everybody take a ticket and you wait your turn to touch your part of the car, right? That's just not. It's just not gonna work. That's just not how humans operate. And I don't even work in like a high pressured kind of situation like this, where like we have 2 hours to get this car back on the track, or, you know.
I mean, I remember back to Daytona, obviously, you know, our car crashed, went out early. Then the other Aston Martin team had an issue with some damage, and both teams jumped on that car. I mean, there was parts flying. It was like a Looney Tunes movie, you know, just parts are flying, people are running around, and there's everyone. It's just instinctive in the racing world, because that's the only racing world I know, that people will go work till 4 a.m. just to get that car to be rolling and on track, right? So it's just intrinsic in a racing team and a member of a racing team.
Yeah, I mean. You could.
Showing there? What is that picture?
That's Paul's new outfit he's going to wear to the race.
Oh.
Chick-fil-A
boy in the
outfit.
bubble. The bubble boy.
Right. This is, I went out, and I'm happy to tell you that, let me see if I can make this bigger. This is going to be Paul's outfit that he's going to wear in the paddock.
Looks like a minion.
Stole it from the Chick-fil-A drive-thru.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. So there you go. Now, Paul, it's sort of done.
Done.
That's how he's going to direct, right?
That's it.
But yeah, I mean, so there's no way, because especially the thing is that people, well, also as humans, we aren't very good at fighting something we can't see, right? Like, so it's an ominous thing, you know, right? Like, it's not like, oh, trees, I have allergies, I have to avoid oak trees. That's a solid thing I can avoid, but it's a disease, you know? And so people are just going to like throw caution to the wind. That's what we're already seeing, right? And so that's humans. So I just don't see this happening. And
I
so
don't either.
not a very good plan, Mr.
Not a good
Braun.
plan. Speaking of Haas F1.
Because I know more than you, Ross Braun, apparently.
Well, yeah, but you know, keep in mind what Ross Braun just said last week.
Life moves pretty fast. You don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it.
That right there is my new Ross Braun soundbite.
Deep. So deep.
Is that a dry cough? I heard that. You're out of here, buddy.
Right. Do you want a gummy bear?
I don't know. Whenever somebody, I mean, it's just flip an eye and somebody coughs and goes, it's not COVID-19, right? Like that never stops. You know, it's just going to be.
I know.
Never ends.
Never
It doesn't. What are you going to do, right?
So Haas F1, they're going to miss the shakedown ahead.
What? Those guys?
What? Who? What the?
I thought they'd given up already.
There's not enough F words. There's not enough F words in that to be about Haas, I feel.
I know. Apparently, they're not going to do a shakedown. Steiner said, quote, we're not having a shakedown. He talked to Old Who's Fault. He said, obviously, you would need to use a filming day, and also, we don't have the capacity. The drivers are ready to go. I don't think they need a lot of training. It's nice to do, but for us at the moment,
this is great.
Not a priority.
This is
to do a shakedown.
This is we need to bring this. This is the bravado of bravado. I think it should be the Gunther Steiner Bravado Award from now on, just because of this set of sentences alone.
This is so good.
This is the greatest moment
We're
ever.
going to use a filming day. Why would we waste a filming day on being prepared for a Formula One World Championship season? Ridiculous. I need to get some snaps of me and the kids, you know, and that's important. Why do we need to waste that family portrait on a good test session?
Why would we want to waste a day taking a picture of Gene riding on top of the car? You know, yeah, it's crazy. It's so good.
Pointless being prepared for a race.
In a car we've never raced.
Yeah.
That was really slow in the practices we did do.
Yeah.
And everything, right? I think that I just, it's just going to be Roman Grosjean's fault.
It will.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, it will. Let's see. Merck and Ferrari are going to run Merck has, and Ferrari's going to run their 2018 car. Racing Point ran their 2020 car. AlphaTauri is also planning on running. McLaren ran F2 cars. F3, sorry.
And now we know because of budgetary constraints rather than some kind of technical issue.
Yeah. Well, I did read in the story, it said they don't have a 2018 car that's capable right now. That program isn't set up right now. It's not running.
Well, I think because they'd need Renault help to do that. They always need Renault personnel around. Right. And I don't think Renault are well enough to give up any personnel to help McLaren.
Who's going to Mercedes,
Right.
They should use some of their heritage vehicles from the technical center.
No, because those are collateral for one or more loans.
You don't want to damage those. Ron might want one of those.
Oh, who put Senna's car in the fence? Damn you, pastor.
That's strange. I wonder what's causing all the accidents.
It's crazy, man. I'm telling you.
It's the acrobatic team. Oh my gosh.
It's just, yeah.
I just like the idea of them like rolling up and like, Kimi's 2005 Mercedes or McLaren, right? McLaren Mercedes. Like, this is all we got. That's it. This is what we're shaking down. This is what we're rolling.
It's right. You got a little bit of an oil leak. So you can only do about 4 laps before you have to top it up again.
They just tape over Kimi and write in Lando and magic marker, right?
Lando's like, what do you got? I got Jensen Button's car. Cool.
Juan Pablo Montoya. Here we go. You couldn't even give me a Lewis? Yeah, right.
Right. I got Fernando's car. Woo!
Hopefully it's from his first run and not his second run.
Right. Oh my gosh. Anyway, he continues, quote, I think this is an advantage. He goes, I would not deny that, but it isn't big. Our guys are working in the factory in Banbury to put the car together, so they have to do
three guys.
One of them is Carl Haas.
He said, white girl would be Gene Haas.
I always do that. That's literally the 800th time I've done that.
The ghost of Carl Haas with his big cigar.
No, he passed away.
I know. And
it's like Weekend at Bernie's. You get Carl Haas propped up over there. Make it turn it. Carl, damn it! No, righty tighty, lefty loosey.
And somebody sent me something on Twitter about this too. Like, I'm sorry, I still call them Force India. I still literally refer to them as McLaren Mercedes, and finally they're gonna be McLaren Mercedes, and I'm finally gonna remember they're just McLaren. I mean. I'm sorry. You're right, Gene Haas.
I don't even know if I can make it through the rest of this quote. He says,
we need this on a T-shirt, though. This is great. I think it's an advantage, but it isn't a big one. How do you say these things?
I don't know. It's so good. He says they're going to be... They're going to... I'm sorry.
Show's done. We're just gonna laugh for the next 15 minutes. It'll be 9:30. The show's over. We didn't even finish with
Can we just pause this?
Oh, I'm sorry, folks. I'm trying to get through this. And he says, he goes, so they're working in the factory in Banbury to put the car together, so they have to do the social distancing there as well. So I'm not too worried about that one. We'll practice the new protocol in the garages instead of out on the track. It used to be a little bit, it's used a little bit also as an excuse to do a shakedown, which if you've got the finances, you want to do it to be sure. As I've always said, we take a little bit more of a risk in these things because I know we've got good people and we will deal with that. We will do the best we can, and that we're in a good position when we get to Austria. I've got no worry about it at all.
Oh my God.
They're in a great position going in Austria.
Yeah.
Great.
They haven't shrunk down the car. They haven't upgraded the car. They've
Right.
got 3 people working there. They've social distanced because they've furloughed everybody.
Oh my God.
They're in great shape. And the drivers,
We don't
especially
need no
Roman,
sneaking shakedown.
you know, he's
to
on his
go.
game right now, you know.
Yeah.
Ready to go.
Who needs practice? You kidding me?
Who needs seat time?
Practice?
Yeah, why would you? It's just the highest pinnacle of racing. Why would you actually need to actually practice? I don't
Yeah.
even get it. You got sim
crazy.
racing.
Yeah.
That's good.
That's
Right.
right.
Yeah.
They haven't even been in that.
Roman's got a sim racing team. He's not even good enough to actually be in the team, but he owns
There you go.
his own sim racing team.
Oh my gosh. All right, let's do some mailbag.
You've got mail.
All right. Jim sent me an email and asked this simple question. Grace, Paul, are you ready?
Sure.
Here we go. Jim says, since this is a strange season and the teams didn't want to do reverse grids, but they are willing to race twice at some circuits, what is one thing that you would like to see F1 try this season? Grace, we'll start with you. Wrong! Paul? No. Grace, go ahead.
Gunther Steiner. Have a team manager swap.
Yeah.
Like wife swap, right? Like
Yeah.
we're just gonna put a Bit Bull at Haas and we're gonna put Steiner over at Renault. It'll be fine.
Be great.
You know, the team principal's also ready to go. They also don't need a shakedown. It'll be fine.
Right.
Yeah, it's good. We don't even need. Yeah.
Well, I have one. Do you want me to start?
Sure.
Sure.
Okay. You know, it is a bit of a wonky season, Paul. And I thought it would be fun since nobody wants to do reverse grids or really muck up the system. But I thought just to be fun, I thought this year would be fun to at least on one race weekend, maybe more, maybe a couple, do throwback liveries.
Absolutely.
Wouldn't that be cool?
That would be very cool.
I would love to see whatever the heritage is of the existing team, like the Mercedes team, if you went all the way back to where they originally started.
No, they're gonna do
Ferrari.
the Earth thing.
Oh,
Yeah,
hold it.
Red Bull
But
could do the Earth car.
Yeah.
But Mercedes did that last year in Germany and really didn't work out well. I think
Sure didn't.
Toto would be to it.
When you see guys in lederhosen running into the pit lane,
Right.
that's not a good sign.
No, I
Where's the
didn't
wheel?
say.
Where's the wheel?
Right.
Wing,
Yeah.
wing. Who's
Wing.
got the wing?
Right.
I don't know.
Right. That's it. So, no, I'm just saying, not the whole team and throwback period pieces. I'm just the
Yeah,
livery.
yeah.
Just
Yeah,
the livery
yeah.
of the car.
That would
Absolutely
be
be
fun.
fantastic.
You know, I would love to
that.
see like Racing Point do the 7-Up car.
Yeah.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, and I like the idea of all the way back through whatever iteration your car was.
Right,
over
right.
the years, right?
Yeah,
Right.
you could go back
Monza
to
would be
Tyrrell.
good. Yeah, something like that. It's a throwback,
Yeah.
a track from the original years.
Yeah, you could see them all blue with the Elf logo. You know,
Right.
that would be awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it would.
Anyway, that's what I would like to see, Jim. What do you guys like to see?
All right, I would like to see, and I talked about it before, where I wanted to see 2 races over a shorter period of time rather than spread it out over one weekend. But at least I'd like to see, I know they don't want reverse grids, but I would like to see a qualifying race for the race. So I say, Saturday morning is qualifying, Saturday afternoon is a qualifying race for your grid position on Sunday. And I think, that still follows Toto's rule of following, whichever the success or speed of the car, it proves itself on track. You shouldn't, just swap the position for the sake of it, but you earn your spot there. And I'd like to see them do a shorter qualifying race on Saturday and just see what happens and how that affects where they end up on Sunday.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. I agree. Grace, what do you think?
So since I don't have control over the weather, because I think that would actually be the most fun, right?
Yeah.
Right? Or sprinklers, I guess, would also give
Yeah,
you
I
the
was just going to
chance.
say sprinklers.
Some sprinklers on that track. But I would also want to bring back refueling or just hold them in the pit lane long enough for refueling.
Right.
Just that
Hey, speaking of that, they said there was less people in a pit stop. And I
When
keep
there was-
reading that, but they don't say what people aren't there anymore.
Yeah. I'm
So
curious what
does
that
this
is
mean
too.
is it going to be a longer pit stop because they're literally going to have to have a lot because
There's
they're supposed
like
to
4
social
guys or
distance during the
something,
pit stops,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And that's something we've talked about before,
Yeah.
where hey, let's make these pit stops actually mean
Yeah.
something rather
Yeah.
than is it
Yeah.
2.2 seconds or 2.3? Oh, disaster! It's 2.5, right?
Right.
Let's put less people on the pit road.
Ah.
And less people making those pit stops
Yeah.
become larger, becomes a bigger part
Yeah.
of
Let's
it.
get back to that 10 second pit stop.
Yeah,
Right,
that's what
So,
yeah,
so same thing like you were saying, Grace. You
Yeah.
don't do the refueling, but let's if you have a lot less
I'm good
people
with that.
doing the pit stops, it'll actually stretch that pit stop out
So
a little longer.
yeah, so we could do some liveries, put them in some costumes, and
I'm
put
good.
only 4 guys over the wall. We're good.
All right.
Everyone wears shorts and scraggly t-shirts.
Except for Williams. Williams can't wear
Face masks
shorts.
to stay safe. But
Well,
little jean
Yeah, so-
shorts. Gordon Murray jean shorts.
Yeah, no, Claire won't let you wear jorts or
No.
any shorts.
no jorts. But yeah, I think that would I like a longer pit stop. I'm with
right,
that. Or
I'm
and
with
some
it.
variation. I think that's
Yeah.
I think that strategy is really lost now. And I know everybody, complained about it.
Yeah.
Oh, everything's it's in the pit stops. Yes, it's strategy. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, I'm all for it.
Yeah. Nowadays you need the slow-mo to actually see what went wrong in the pit stop.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right?
You could watch the 20-second Ferrari pit stop and just be laughing, go get a drink, come back, and it's still going on, right?
Yeah.
Literally, you go look back at some of the 1970s pit stops, pretty remarkable.
Instead of the wheel gun with the nut, just make new spinner nuts that they have to beat off with rubber mallets.
Yeah.
Where they have to beat them off and then spin them off and spin them back on. All right, let's do
All right,
some
good.
awards. First awards, post of the week. All right, I'm giving it to Marty.
Okay.
Well done,
Best
Marty.
picture in 1955. Marty on the McLaren sale said Michael Latifi only has a 10% stake in McLaren, the same stake he has in Williams, enough to elevate him from minority shareholder status to the next level, though still not a significant shareholder. Objectively, McLaren Racing would be a good buy at this time, with the Mercedes PU waiting, ready in the background, and I agree with Marty. I think, well, it's an interesting point, and we talked about it with McLaren. I think it might be an interesting time to buy McLaren, whether that's the F1 team or the whole operation. But it does make me wonder, what is the better deal at this point? You have 3 teams in real financial struggle: Williams, Haas, and McLaren. What would be the better deal? Now, I'm not talking about McLaren Group and buying the road car. I'm just talking about the F1 team.
Depends on the cost, right?
Yeah.
Cost of it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Because wouldn't you buy McLaren short
Yeah.
of cost? I mean, right?
Right.
McLaren has the best chance of being successful.
Right. And although Williams has the same power unit
right, but I think the technology within McLaren is
Yeah.
with the
much
chassis.
larger
Yes.
than what Williams have right now.
Right. And McLaren has Andreas Seidel, too.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So I would agree. Of those 3, I'd be looking at McLaren. But
I don't know. After that Steiner quote, though.
Well, and I
Haas
think
is
the
looking pretty
McLaren.
good.
I think the McLaren would be a lot more expensive than Haas
Right.
or
But
Williams.
I would put Gunther in a different position, however.
He'd be the guy with the
Yeah.
rubber mallet, right?
You might be making the cup of tea back in hospitality, but
That's right. Grumbling like
why do
that.
we need to practice? Let's just go
Yeah.
straight to the race. We'll start at the back like we usually do.
It's tea. It's fine.
All right.
Dump some in there. Whatever. You're just gonna put milk on top of it. It's fine.
Why does it need to be hot? Doesn't really matter.
God, keep on your effing standards.
Procedures.
Poor,
Just drink
poor
the tea.
Gunther. You guys have him like R2D2 serving drinks on the party barge.
I mean, literally, he's the reason why Drive to Survive still exists. Is just for the Gunther Steiner episode. I mean,
I agree.
that guy's
All
great.
right. All right, next award is Grace's favorite, because it is the Lewis Hamilton Fashion Award.
Lewis Hamilton, there's no stopping him.
Get in there, Lewis.
Lewis Hamilton, there's no stopping him.
Get in there, Lewis.
Love that.
All right.
I know you do.
Never
I
gets
can
old.
see it.
It's genius. It's genius, that song.
Brings you to tears every time.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I give you this week's Fashion Award winner, but you've got to go watch our podcast on our YouTube channel to see it. Here it comes. It is none other. Looky there.
Ginger
Looky
Spice's
there.
husband.
Ginger Spice's
That's
husband.
Right.
Look.
Oh wait. Look
at
how big
Christian
that
Horner.
yard is. He's not mowing. They're not mowing that with a push mower.
No, He's just profiling for his photo, and then he has his little deck chair off to the side where he can watch his help do it for the rest of the time.
Nobody should be mowing that much yard with a push mower.
Yeah.
Over to the left, there's actually a tractor with a brush hog on it, but never mind that. Hey, I was going to tell you guys, you know how when drivers drive for different companies, like when drivers drive for Ferrari, they get super nice, Ferraris to drive around, or Fiats or whatever it might be. Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, the drivers at Red Bull get NSXs, but Christian gets a Honda mower.
Mm.
Maybe this was his Father's Day present.
Till you win us a championship, Christian.
It's tomorrow.
So who you get?
Who's your favorite driver? Who was Hamilton?
Yeah.
That was my other favorite moment from Drive to Survive. Man, it's bad when your own children troll you. That's pretty good.
Yeah. All right. The final award is always a fun one. I think we do have to rename this. And I'm now leaning towards the Gunther Steiner.
I think so.
Bravado Award. Yep.
The Steiner.
The Steiner Award. I like it.
I feel it.
It's an advantage, but not a big one.
No. Who would want to waste a filming day?
Yeah. Well, don't you want to do the whole COVID, practice? No.
We'll just do it in the garage.
Figure it out. We can do it in the my garage, actually.
My garage. We'll figure it out. Don't worry about it.
Which says what? Gatherings of 10 or fewer, we're good.
Right.
Yeah. We'll practice in the rental car on the way to the track.
So my award goes to James Allison and Mercedes on the upgrades right out of the box. They have this shootout. They don't have like a 22 race season. They have 10, 15 races, whatever it is. So it's going to be a shootout from get-go. And Mercedes this week said, yeah, we are already showing up at Austria with a whole bunch of upgrades. They haven't even turned to wheel and anger yet this season, and they're showing up with upgrades. Here's what he said. If you imagine where the launch car was and the car that would have gone to Australia, that was frozen around Christmas. There would be a whole of January, a whole of February, March, all making the car quicker in the wind tunnel and also in the design departments. We got quite a lot of ideas about how to make it quicker, and quite a lot of ideas were already in the process through the design office before we were forced to shut down 9 weeks ago.
Shut down.
It was a shutdown.
We were shut down while we were building parts elsewhere at Mercedes.
While they were shut down and nobody was working, apparently they've upgraded damn near the whole car, and it hasn't even turned to wheel and anger yet. That's amazing. Mm-hmm. They're going to show up at Austria with practically a completely different car.
Yeah.
Well, I want to believe that that's because that's what was in their schedule. Like everybody comes with almost like all these upgrades to Catalunya. Like that's what's in the Gantt chart. We got to keep going. We can't.
I know, but if you haven't even tested or ran the car, how would you know?
Doesn't matter. That's what's in the schedule. We're making these parts now.
They got the new speed buggy DAS system, which actually lifts the car up, so when it passes everybody, it just goes up and over them and then comes back down again. Yeah,
it's perfect. Nice. I love it. By contrast, here's what the Steiner said. he said this quote: I cannot spend money which I don't know if I've got. There's no point to do that at the moment. We have to be very cautious with what we're doing, because obviously, the income is going down and having less races and having races without spectators. So until it's very clear, I'm very cautious.
Why upgrades? Why even bother with upgrades? They don't do anything.
No.
Stupid.
This is my quote for the week. So until it's very clear, I'm very cautious.
Yeah, I like that.
You can use that in so many situations.
Yeah.
I don't know.
The money we may not have.
Right.
We don't have.
That you don't have.
Right.
And I like this one. I think it's an advantage, but I would not deny that it's. He said, "I think it is an advantage. I would not deny that, but it isn't big."
Yeah. That's also good too.
Like all things. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
An advantage, but it's not a very big one. Yeah.
Not a very big one.
Just a couple of seconds.
All right. Well, that does it for this podcast. I hope you've enjoyed it, because certainly I have. At the meantime, stop by the website, theparcfermé.com. Share your opinion. Just do it with decorum and civility. Huge, huge shout out to all of our Patreon supporters. We couldn't and wouldn't do this without you. And if you are considering, if you like this podcast and you've considered supporting us, it would be greatly appreciated at this time. You can go to our website. On the right-hand side, it says support us with Patreon. Click on that. It'll go to the Patreon page, and you can sign up and support us for as little as $1 a month. So anyway, huge thank you to all of our Patreon supporters. And Paul, Grace, it's been fun.
It has been fun. Thank you, Gunther.
Yes.
I'm looking forward to the Gunther
Thank you,
Steiner.
Integra.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hang with the Integra.
That's right.
I like it.
Who knows
All
what car I'll have next week?
Well, who knows?
Probably not going to be a McLaren.
Could be the Santa Fe.
No, that's gone.
Is the helmet for your son or for the passenger?
That's my old helmet.
I assume that, but I'm just saying, it's funnier to think that, you or your wife
when I
was the
start
passenger.
he's going to get his license in a week and a half, so I need to wear that
right
during our lessons.
Nice.
That'd be great when you show up at the driver's test if you get out of the driver's side wearing that.
I got my hands device on.
Yeah.
I got like 3-layer suit from 1982, which is super thick.
That'd be great.
I love it. Awesome.
You won't be too hot in Texas or anything. It'll be fine.
Good luck. He's fine. He's a good driver.
You look like Randy from A Christmas Story.
Yeah. I can't put my arms down.
Ralphie.
Ralphie, that's it. Ralphie.
He was like a slug. It was his only defense.
His only defense. Yeah, I love it. All right. That does it. Until next week when we do it all over again. This is Todd, a.k.a. Negative Camera, saying so long.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.